All right, so we're gonna make this pretty quick, so I'll dive straight into it. This is the SIG Tango MSR 1 to 10 Lpvo, the 1 to 10. Didn't see very many videos on it, so I figured I'd do one for you guys so you get a little bit more content. I looked at a lot of Lpvos in the 1 to 10, even one of them that was a 1 to 12 that I didn't even know existed, and lots of 1 to 8s as well. This is as close to true power as I've seen in a 1 to 10 until you get to the 2000 and up. So outside of that, 1500 and below, I didn't see a better, seen equal, I didn't see a better true 1 power than this SIG 1 to 10 Tango. What you're about to see is as the scope goes across, you might see what almost looks like warping. With my actual eyes, I don't see that. I think it's kind of like the camera is giving us something freaky, but with my actual eyes, I don't see that effect that you're going to see here in a moment. Regardless, with my eyes, when I look through it and I go across, I haven't seen a better true 1 power than this thing here. And then we're going to get into the bright. Now, as you can see, it's a bright day. I am in the shade, but you know it's sunny out, and you'll see those crosshairs actually when I turn the bead up here, when I turn the red dot up, you'll see that here in a second. You can still see it. The only time it gets hard to see, and I put it on repeat, so bear with me as you'll see it hit play over and over. You can see that red dot perfectly fine. Now, when you look into like the sky, into the, not into the sun necessarily, but just into the sky while it's bright, no clouds out, super bright into the clouds, no, you don't really see that red dot. But in any other, even if I'm in the sun and I'm aimed at a tree, or I'm, you know, if I'm aimed at something, you can see it. As you can see, that red dot is still clear regardless. So they ask, you know, people ask, is the red dot daylight bright or whatever? Yes and no. As you've seen, it is, but you can't just aim it at the brightness of the sky on a super sunny day and get a bright light. No, but if you're aiming at your targets, you can be out in bright day aiming at your targets, you'll still see that red dot. So in my opinion, it works great. Again, it's a 1 to 10 Lpvo. Spinning, you know, turning it from 1 to 10, it's not super hard. It's not easy, but it's not hard at all. And I kind of like that. It's got this in between. It's like just right for me. You know, I don't want it too loose. It's not difficult whatsoever. I felt some that were much tougher to, you know, spin around to the higher power. This isn't like that. It's more so in the middle. Is it the best when it comes to going from 1 to 10? No, definitely not the worst though. You know, I'd say it's, you know, second or maybe third best I felt. The eye box is good. I mean, well, it's decent. It's not the greatest, but of course it's a $500 optic, so let's not forget that. I'm super duper pleased with it. Super duper pleased. There's some other things about this that I really appreciate about this scope. One is how much it weighs compared to the other 1 to 10s. This thing weighs 20 ounces, basically flat. So that's like amazing. I've seen some other stats, specs on it, and I've seen some that said it was 21. It's not 21. I put it on my scale, guys. It's not 21. It is 20 ounces, pretty much flat. So that is amazing for a 1 to 10. The other thing is it's a 1 to 10 by 28, not by 24. That's also awesome. And the tube is a nice thick tube. That's also a beautiful thing. So it's got a nice thick tube. And it also comes with the scope mount. Okay, so I bought this for, oh, what was it? I think after tax 520 something. That is amazing. That's beautiful. So that's great. So all the positives, true 1 power, daylight bright, red dot, good enough for what you need. Like, you're not going to shoot into the sky, so it doesn't need to be bright as you aim into the sky. But as long as you're aiming at something, right, you will be able to see that red dot as you see. I'm good to go there. I'm impressed with that. The actual reticle itself, I'm hoping you guys can get a good view of that reticle, but it's a really good reticle. In my opinion, I've not seen a better reticle except for primary arms. So to me, this is second best reticle itself on the market. I give, and this is just personal opinion. Some of you may like the reticle on this better than primary arms, but personally, I like the reticle on primary arms the best, number 1, period. And then the SIG would be number 2, followed very closely by, I like the Swamp Fox optic. Makes it really easy, you know. Now the one thing though about the SIG Tango 1 to 10 reticle is when the red dot is there, and let's go back to that. That red dot, you know, when it's in that mode, it's, you know, they didn't make it to where everything is red and everything's lit up. No. In a much darker environment, you're not seeing all these other things to, you know, bother you, to throw you off. You will get basically just that, that halo, and that's it. I do not like reticles that they light up everything in the reticle, because now it's like, the focus of that halo being on your target is kind of thrown off a little bit. And that's where I believe SIG did it right. I mean, I absolutely love the fact that they did that. And see that line right there? Let's go back to that. So that line right there that you see, just kind of like in the middle of the scope, that is just one little extra thing that SIG did to help with mounting, the scope and getting it in the scope mount. And if you line that up with the middle, space there of the scope mount rings, you're leveled. And it makes it so freaking easy. I love that. I love the fact that the scope mount lets you know how tight, everything needs to be. It gives you the exact, I mean, this thing is it's great. It's light, they cut into it, so it's not so much mass. I mean, what you're getting is amazing, right? So those are the good things, right, that I just named off. Oh, the length is the other thing. For 1 to 10, this thing is compact. Go ahead and check it out. Most other 1 to 10s are much longer than this. It may be the most compact 1 to 10, definitely in its price range. I got to double check that. But I believe it's the shortest, one of the shortest, if not the shortest, of the 1 to 10 Lpvos. It is second focal plane, which is what I prefer. I think we may have stepped a little too far away from Kentucky windage and just knowing your scope, knowing your rifle, and knowing where it shoots, where it groups at 50, at 100, at 150, et cetera, on and on. Knowing your gun is extremely important. When you know it, when you know your rifle, you don't need all that stuff, guys. I'm not saying it's not convenient to have, but for me personally, it's not necessary. I know my scope. I know, my rifle. So there's that. Is that all the good? There's so much good. Oh, the turrets are absolutely excellent. They're audible. All that is, those are great. And they're not sticking up too high. They're like low pro and low profile. And I really do appreciate that. Just an amazing scope. Amazing Lpvo. 1 to 10. SIG knocked this out the park. Now, what cons are there? These aren't things I say this is just so horrible, but they are things where I say, SIG, come on, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? There's not many, but there's a couple things. Number one is the illumination. Now, not in the sense of, because I just told you what I loved about the illumination. I don't think there's a better Lpvo 1 to 10 on the market that does a better job of placing the illumination on the right, part of the reticle, so that you focus on the right things. It's absolutely brilliant. So what I say about that is, listen, when you go to turn on that red dot, the illumination, and there's 11 settings, 2 negatives. One, not most, but there's a lot of Lpvos, the competitors of the SIG Tango MSR, is they have blank spots in between each illumination setting. And that is so freaking convenient. My goodness, I can't stress how convenient that is. Well, this doesn't have that. This does not have that. Okay. And that's frustrating, right? Because why didn't you guys just do that, SIG? You'd have been just that much better than the rest if you would have done that. All the rest are doing it. And there's no excuse, because this is a fairly new Lpvo. It's not like they weren't aware of the competition. At least I don't think, if they're paying any attention. But yeah, like they could have done that. Instead, it's just 1 to 11. 0 is off, and then go 1 to 11. So that's a knock on the SIG Tango. The illumination knobs, like not having basically the off button in between each number, is a knock. It's a con. It's a SIG you could have done better. I guess the thickness of the view through the scope. So now let me say this. It's not that bad like what we're seeing, because, I'm using a video, object recorder, whatever. So it looks worse than it actually is. But the point is, there is that, that thickness around there as you're looking through the Lpvo. And here, to be fair, the only time I see that non-existent is when we get up in the, $2,000 plus Lpvos. at least 1500. Then that gets much thinner. You don't have that thickness there. Again, it's not that bad what you're seeing there, but it still is, a little thicker than maybe some people would like. But as far as all the other competitors, the Strike Eagle, the Primary Arms, the Swamp Fox Arrowhead, all the rest of them, it's on par with its competition. Okay, so is that a ding on it? Like compared to what, I guess, you know what I mean? So there's that. Just know there's that. It's not going to be super thin, no, it's there's some thickness there. But the eye relief, I think it has a very good eye relief. But as far as, left, right, up, down, in its price range, hangs with the rest of them, right? Hangs with the rest of them, maybe slightly better. But it's not going to be like the Vortex Razor. It's not going to be like the Night Force. It's just not a $2,000 Lpvo. But I will say that there's certain Lpvos that cost $1,300 and $1,400. And guess what? This SIG outclasses Lpvos that cost double, and in some instances triple, Lpvos in cost. Trijicon being one, which I don't have a problem with Trijicon. There's things that Trijicon has that outdoes this, but the fact that this is $500 and comes with a mount and all these goody things, yeah, I looked through some scopes and listen, I could have bought whatever I wanted. Okay, literally, you see the gun it's on, like, but it just blew everything out the water. Like when I first looked through it, I said, okay, this thing's got to be $1,300, and I was ready to pay that. When I heard, $530 out the door, it was like, oh, these guys must, messed up. Like they messed up on inventory and they don't realize they're giving me the 1 to 6 price. Let me hurry up and buy this and get the hell out of here, was almost my mentality, because I could not believe that it only cost that much, because it was that good in comparison to the other Lpvos, especially in its price range, and even better than a lot that are much pricier than it is. So yeah, I mean, really, guys, the illumination knob and those first couple, level 1 and 2 is really kind of my only like knocks on it. And if those things are major, like super important for you, then yeah, maybe get something else. But for me, it had far more pros, and it was more than worth it. As far as its durability, I can't give you that. I can't give you that. I accidentally dropped it a couple of times. Pretty good. I almost cried. And no problem. No shift in 0. And I checked that, no shift in 0. It was great. It was great. So, but that doesn't tell you much. Being honest, that doesn't tell you much at all. It's not like I dropped it from like 6 feet or something. I don't know how durable it is. I can't give you that information. I wish I knew. I'd like to know myself, so I don't have that information. But as far as, like even the clarity, it's great clarity. Again, in its price range, I haven't seen anything better. As good? Sure. Better? No, not at all. It's very clear. It's not $2,000 clear, but dag nabbit, you'd think it was $1,400 clear. So that's that. The SIG Tango 1 to 10 Lpvo. I am a happy camper. All those pros, the cons aren't a big deal. The clarity is great when you crank it up to 10, and then shift, the back focus point. I'm sorry, I'm not being very exact with what I'm speaking of, but the eyepiece, that first part there, you can adjust that. When you adjust that with the distance, and for me, in my eyes, I've got a really bad stigmatism, and I'm extremely nearsighted. And so when I crank that thing up to 8 to 9 to 10, I adjust that eyepiece there and pretty much go all the way to the other side, all the way out. And when I do that, my goodness, 8 and 10 distance look freaking great. I mean, it's extremely impressive. It blows the competition out the water as far as that's concerned. It is a great Lpvo. Very, very happy with it. So there's that. More videos on the way, so stay tuned.